Welcome back to the SportsMax Zone. There have been a few major developments in the administration of West Indies cricket over the past 48 to 72 hours. Firstly, Sunday's annual general meeting of Cricket West Indies was adjourned due to a lack of a quorum. The representatives from Barbados and Guyana were absent, leaving the meeting short of the required numbers. That means the elections for posts, including president and vice president, have been postponed until Sunday, April 11. Ricky Skerritt and his vice president, Dr. Kishore Shallow, are being challenged by the pair of Anand Sanasie and Calvin Hope. Now, earlier on this Monday, the Guyana Cricket Board held its elections, and Anand Sanasie lost his place on the executive. Up to Monday morning, Sanasie was the secretary of the GCB, but following the elections, he has been replaced by Ronald Williams, who will serve under new president Bissoon Singh. So what, if any, bearing will this have on Sanasie's bid for the top job at Cricket West Indies? His running mate, Calvin Hope, joins us this afternoon. Calvin, welcome again to the SportsMax Zone. Good to be speaking to you again.
Thank you, George, and to your panel, Mariah and Lance.
Great. The obvious place to start, Calvin, is where were you on Sunday?
On Sunday, I was following what the BCL asked me to follow.
Okay, so what do you know about why the BCA's representative was not on the meeting as agreed? And if you could extend that to hopefully helping us with why the Guyana representative was also not on the meeting as agreed.
Well, I don't speak for the BCA as the vice president. I speak on what the board has decided. Having not received the audited financial statements in reasonable time for the BCA board to go through them, analyze them in conjunction with its representatives, the BCA felt that it could not attend the meeting because the BCA had asked for a postponement of the meeting because it had not received the audited financial statements in reasonable time.
What is a reasonable time?
Well, reasonable time is not on the weekend.
You got it how many days before the scheduled AGM?
We got them on Saturday.
Which was 24 hours prior.
Yeah.
And you're saying that that's not reasonable time?
No, because we are a business organization. I mean, a weekend to go choosing on one day to pull a meeting together and stuff like that. When, in fact, George, the board of CWI had not even approved those financial statements.
Yes.
There was no meeting of CWI to approve those financial statements. When you hear people say, oh, they were submitted before and there were no changes. Well, if they were submitted to the board on the 11th of March, and at that board meeting, it was said to the board that the auditors did not sign off on those statements that were put to the board. And we needed, say, about 2 weeks to get our house in order. And a letter came from the auditors to that effect, that, they would not sign off on the statements unless they were consolidated with the accounts of the acquired Coolidge facility, which we've been spending money on. And the auditors said were in line with international accounting standards and they could not go against those standards.
Hold it right there, Calvin. Hold it right there, Calvin. I have something at hand. I wanted to verify the veracity for me. I hear you speaking about something along those lines. I just want to know if what we have is accurate. We've caught sight of something which says, coming from the auditors to the board of directors of Cricket West Indies, to say that we write to inform you, March 11, 2021, we write to inform you that having worked with management to substantially complete the audit of the separate financial statements of Cricket West Indies, Inc., we became aware the presentation of standalone financial statements would not permit us to issue an unqualified opinion on the separate financial statements. It continues, We have therefore today requested management to present for audit the consolidated financial statements of CWI, which will include the financial statements of Coolidge Cricket Ground Inc. Upon receipt of the consolidated management accounts, we will estimate the revised completion date of the audit and communicate that to management. We apologize for this late request. This is a late request being made on March 11 in light of the scheduled AGM, and assure you we are committed to working assiduously to complete the audit of the consolidated financial statements as a matter of urgency. We thank management for the assistance rendered throughout the audit, and we thank you for your understanding. We apologize unreservedly for any inconvenience. This is coming from Carol Nichols, our information suggests, senior partner at the auditing firm KPMG. Can you confirm that this piece of communication is accurate and that this was what was sent to the Board of Directors of Cricket West Indies on March 11?
I did not see it, but that is what it was said, that a letter was received. But it was not read to the meeting as to the content, but I accepted that the auditors would have sent a letter,
yes,
saying what their position was, and the fact that they were not signed off on.
But hold on. So I want to distill and separate some things, Calvin, and you can appreciate the need for detail given your profession as an attorney. So you're saying that the Cricket West Indies, the directors then, were told on March 11 that the auditors needed better particulars.
Yes.
So when those better particulars were sent, do you know at what time the auditors, having received those better particulars, inserted them into their work and then gave CWI a final statement which was to be distributed to its members? Can you say when that happened?
As a director, I can tell you, George, I do not know. I do not know as a director, because there was no communication to the directors that the auditors have signed off, and no presentation was made on whether there were changes or no changes in what was presented before. And I would say that since March the 11th, and you come up to the day before, why would it take so long if these changes were not material and substantial? That's the question.
Yes.
And therefore, the BCA was asking for its directors and its representatives time to go through these things to ascertain what questions they could ask, what questions they could instruct the representatives to ask, or if the representatives had any advice for the board. We were not given the opportunity.
Yeah, I want to suggest to you, Calvin Hope, that the Cricket West Indies then would appear to have been using the letter from the auditors and the need for better particulars to complete their work as a reason, perhaps even excuse, for not having the financials ready in time for dissemination. I'm making that suggestion to you. What say you to that?
Yes, and George, what I'm saying to you, even if that is so, don't you think it would have been right and proper for the CWI to communicate to its shareholders that we have this letter, but give us a chance, right? We are going to rely on this letter as you have said, right? Now, that brings me to the point of waiver. Yes, they asked for a waiver of the time to submit, but then you did not receive them in reasonable time, even if one gives a waiver to missing a particular period that is stipulated in the articles. It is still prudent in corporate governance to give reasonable time, because it is not just communicating to directors, it is not just communicating with a few individuals. If you are a reasonable shareholder and doing your job on behalf of your members, when a company owes you substantial amount of money and is writing off debt and all kind of other things that they're doing, and you don't know what is the position with the Coolidge situation, it is only prudent that you have information and the documents that you can think. The BCA never was always in goodwill and has always been. But we are a serious organization. I certainly take my service very seriously. Where, for instance, the history of the BCA. Who am I as an individual to flout and to call the BCA's image into question?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We do that when we expose ourselves to that.
Yeah.
There is serious good reason for it.
All right. So okay. So you've affirmed all of that. All right. So you contend that 24 hours was not a reasonable time and could not have been. What would have been a reasonable time? 4 days, 5 days, a week? What?
Well, even if they'd given us say 4 days, or say from Wednesday or Thursday, at least you had another business day that you could think. But we rolled and asked for a postponement, and it was flatly denied, and we gave reasons why. It was flatly denied.
Yeah. All right. So it was important to hear you on why Barbados didn't show up, and you've articulated that. Let me get to another point from the events on Sunday. And even before that, the fact of the elections today for the Guyana Cricket Board, the executive positions, president and such. Firstly, did Anand Sanasie, based on your best information, offer himself for election today?
I'm not aware. I was otherwise engaged today all day, and I haven't got any communication other than on WhatsApp that this thing have unfolded in there. I haven't spoken to him as yet.
But counsel, it seems odd, well, are more than a bit curious that your running mate for the senior position in West Indies cricket, you don't know if he offered himself up for re-election at the GCB?
Well, what I can say to you that I do not think so. And let me tell you why I do not think so. What I have heard out of Guyana is that there was no notice given to the association that Mr. Sanasie is part of, that stakeholder, to attend the meeting. That the notice in the act has not been complied with by giving notice to all members.
Yes.
Also, that the verification of the list of voters,
yes,
have not been complied with.
Okay.
That is what I have
yes.
heard.
So
I do not know.
Yeah.
But I am saying that if all of the matters that the act calls for are not complied with, well then Mr. Sanasie and his people and his lawyers would deal with that.
So let me ask you this then. Given that the nomination for West Indies president and the other posts was closed, and that by the time it was closed, Sanasie was duly nominated given the post he held then with the GCB. Yeah. What effect, if any, does today's election result, which is not on this new executive, have on his standing as a candidate for the post of president of Cricket West Indies?
In my opinion, what happened today would be after the fact, so it would not add, I don't think it would have any bearing on whether he's a legitimate candidate or not. The impact of that may well result in the votes from Guyana maybe in question as whether they will go to Sanasie and Hope or go to the other side.
Yes.
And I don't know, but that might have been the motive from the beginning.
Yes, yes. Hold it right there, Calvin Hope. After the break, I want to ask you about the manner in which the CWI AGM gave notice that the voting will proceed. I think that's a very important point to clarify for the benefit of the cricket fans as well. Hold it right there. Calvin Hope, Vice Presidential Candidate, Cricket West Indies, talking to us out of Barbados. Back with us on the SportsMax Zone, Calvin Hope, Vice President of the Barbados Cricket Association. He's a long-standing cricket administrator and attorney at law, and he has aspirations to become the next Vice President of Cricket West Indies. His running mate is Anand Sanasie, who's from Guyana, and the matter of the AGM at which the elections were to have been held, set for Sunday, did not happen as planned because there was a lack of quorum. The territorial representatives were there, but there was no Guyana representative and no Barbados representative. Hence, the elections rescheduled for April 11, that Sunday, April 11. And in between that time, the Guyana Cricket Board have had their elections, and Sanasie, who was the secretary, is no longer the secretary. That's now Ronald Williams, who's serving a new president, so a new executive in charge at the BCA, the GCB, beg your pardon, and the implications for that, well, are open to interpretation. We've heard Calvin Hope say, well, it doesn't seem to have any bearing on Sanasie's candidacy for Cricket West Indies, the top post, because this election would have happened after the fact, and at the time of nomination, and when it closed, he was duly nominated to challenge Ricky Skerritt. Calvin Hope remains with us. Calvin Hope, I want to go to the matter of the voting, because I saw something which I have made my own notes, which says that for the AGM, which these elections will be a part of that agenda, the business of the voting will occur in first instance by a show of hands. Where a full member present and entitled to vote at the meeting demands a poll, the poll will be conducted as follows. The chairman will request representatives to vote and state their name, member they are authorized to represent, the vote which they are being registered, so that the vote can be seen, heard, and verified by the auditors. And that should there be an objection to voting by poll in open forum, representatives will vote by ballot. Notice it doesn't say secret ballot, it says ballot, in accordance with the following. Ballot cards will be circulated for completion by each member representative, who will then submit the ballot card via return email to the corporate secretary, chairman, and the auditors with a copy to the full member association which they represent during the meeting. Once the ballots are received, they will be counted and verified by the auditors. First question, are these the rules that you understand will govern the election at the CWI AGM?
Those are not the rules that were communicated to the BCA on a letter to ask for verification of what the process will be. The letter BCA wrote and asked, what is the process? And said that it expect that the framework would be put in place in case a representative asks for a poll to be done in accordance with Article 41.
So you're saying that the letter to the BCA differs from this which I'm seeing, which I'm confident is what the AGM set down for Sunday, yes?
Totally, sir. Totally.
So your BCA letter doesn't say anything about a show of hands at first instance?
No, hold on. Let me explain to you. The letter that the BCA got indicated it would be a show of hands. The vote would be taken by show of hands. And then, if somebody asks for a poll, then a poll will be done.
That's what this is saying, though.
How does that make sense?
But that's what this is saying. That's what my communication is saying as well.
Right. But I'm saying you have more in there that we didn't get. But what I'm saying to you, voting by show of hands and then taking a ballot makes no sense. How does that make sense? Because the vote is already done.
But let me ask you.
It makes no sense.
Let me ask you this though. I'm concerned about the part that says that ballot cards, if it gets there, will be circulated, and once submitted, the ballot cards will be sent to the corporate secretary, the chairman, and the auditors. Why is it that the ballot card would have to be sent through so many layers? And is this something that you would agree to at the election?
No, because you see, all of that has never been communicated to us. And what I would say to you, in the articles, the corporate secretary has no power to decide what process voting takes place, is put in place. That is for the board. It is, and nothing like that has come to the board. And I would say to you that whether or not a meeting is conducted virtually or otherwise, or in person, that the obligation, right, of CWI is to have the framework in place to facilitate what the shareholders want. And it is easy to set up a voting online. Furthermore, for voting by line, which will be confidential. Furthermore, it is the standard in all across elections, unless you're voting within your family, that confidentiality is important, because this was demonstrated in 2019 when the Jamaica representatives, and one of them called for a poll by secret ballot. And it was done in the election of the two incumbents. And that has happened for the last since incorporation of CWI in 1998, George. So what we are saying is just the ballot, the vote, if a shareholder asks for a voting member asks for a ballot by a poll by secret ballot, that should be accorded as the precedent. Don't bring and put up this float around the room, because that is not the president, and that begs the question as to why. What are you afraid of?
Calvin, Calvin, there appears to be several things that you were uneasy about heading into these elections. The narrative coming from the current CWI president and his team is suggesting shock and total surprise at your non-attendance to this meeting on Sunday, suggesting also that you had given your word that you would be a part of the meeting. How would you respond to that?
No, the BCA has never given any word about anything about being part of a meeting, right? We asked for a postponement, and that was it, right? Now, you hear a lot of talk. You know, in election, people would spin things, right? We asked simply for postponement of the meeting for reasons. That was flatly denied, and the BCA board made a decision based on good corporate governance, taking advice from serious senior accountants of several years' experience in Barbados that are members of the BCA.
I gather in your discussion with George just now, because it's my understanding that Sanasie was not a part of the GCB elections today. And there was a part of what you said earlier on that suggested that you would not be surprised, let's put it that way, if Sanasie legally does not accept what the GCB decided on today by way of their elections.
Well, if I were in his position, I would examine the articles and see the provisions of the GCB's, of the Guyana Cricket Administration Act, and to see what rights I have and what I can pursue. And I'm sure that he will do that.
Calvin, the time has run out on us, so we could go all day because there are so many things to talk about. Thank you for speaking with us, though.
If I can say one more thing.
Yes, please.
This thing about when Mariah was given the update, she referred that the president of CWI referred to Conde Riley and a gang. You see, that kind of language is disrespect for the shareholders, and that is what we are talking about. To refer to shareholders as a gang. Total disrespect.
Yeah.
That is the president of CWI speaking about people that own a company that he is giving stewardship of.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Man, he should know better than that.
Yeah, similar sentiments expressed, but perhaps in a different context, by the Jamaica Cricket Association in their press release on the matter, which we'll have on the other side. Thank you for speaking with us, Calvin. That's all the time we have. All the best.
Okay, thank you very much.
Calvin Hope, Vice Presidential Candidate, Cricket West Indies. More on the matters concerning West Indies cricket after the break. Back with us on the SportsMax Zone. There have been a few major developments in the administration of West Indies cricket over the past 48 to 72 hours. Sunday's AGM adjourned due to a lack of quorum, you would recall, and the representatives from Barbados and Guyana were absent. So just before we find our best stride, I must ask Mariah and Lance, based on what Calvin said, Mariah, and what we knew before coming on air, are you any more clear as to the reasons that caused at least Barbados not to show up on Sunday?
Yeah, definitely clear. But George and Lance, I always keep saying, sometimes it's not the reason and, how you feel and what you do. My issue with it is, how it affects the product, and the product is West Indies cricket. And I started to think, these leaders, for them to lead by example off the field, they do these things and then you tell the team to bond and, work together. How do you tell a team that when you're not even doing it yourself?
Before you go there, Lance, let's crack on, because the Jamaica Cricket Association, we spoke about this before the break, the JCA, they've warned against a culture of division being allowed to take root in West Indies cricket following these circumstances which caused the adjournment of Sunday's annual general meeting of Cricket West Indies. The adjournment, due to a lack of quorum, meant the election for posts, including president and vice presidents, have been postponed to April 11. This is the statement from the JCA, beg your pardon. They say, the JCA is deeply concerned Cricket West Indies had to adjourn its annual general meeting on the 28th of March due to the lack of a quorum. It is noted that the representatives from Barbados and Guyana were absent without an apology, despite the fact their attendance was previously authorized. This comes at a time when we need to work together to continue the rebuilding of our cricket, which requires a mature approach on the part of everyone, especially those in leadership roles. As one of the final bastions of Caribbean unity, it is even more important we overcome whatever challenges we may have individually and work collectively to preserve our lasting legacy. Meanwhile, the president of the TNT Cricket Board, Bassarath, had this to say: I do hope they're going to put their differences behind them and let us come together and vote for the benefit of West Indies cricket. We have made the decision, and we are sticking to the decision that we made some time ago, that our support is for Ricky Skerritt as president and Kishore Shallow for vice president. We are also more disappointed too, knowing fully well that West Indies will be taking the field to play a test match, and we don't know what sort of psychological disadvantage this may have on the management team and the players, because it will give the impression as if there is disunity among the directors of the West Indies Cricket Board. More meat.
Well, I think as Bassarath, he hit the nail on the head, and I think he sort of expressed my views. My issue is not with, what is being done and how it's being done. My issue is the end product, which is the cricket and the culture of division that you read about, George, from Jamaica, and then you have Bassarath talking about moving forward. So instead of us knowing who is leading the helm of Cricket West Indies, we now have to wait until April 11th. So many things could have been done between that time and then. So I feel like instead of moving forward, we've taken a couple steps backward.
Yeah, we heard from the Trinidad and Tobago Cricket Association and the Jamaica Cricket Association as well. The Windwards Cricket Board also issued a statement praising the CWI current regime for its skill and fortitude in uniting West Indies cricket, and of course putting their support behind Skerritt and his men. I want to say that, sometimes people say that things have to get worse before they get better. And we have seen in recent years acrimonious presidential battles for Cricket West Indies. Before Dave Cameron took over from Julian Hunt, Hunt had served 3 consecutive terms as an unopposed president. And presidents before him, for the most part, there was no acrimonious build-up to elections. It for the most part, had been a seamless situation. Well, we have seen now in the last 2 or 3 elections that it's not heading in that direction. And maybe we are heading for some kind of reform. We've heard so many stories and so many proposals about the governance of West Indies cricket and the need to reform the governance of West Indies cricket. And maybe this contentious and acrimonious tone that the last 2 elections have been setting is preparing us for the need for some sort of reform with the ruling and the administration of West Indies cricket, because this, as Maraz said, George, doesn't look good. These are the men who are administrating West Indies cricket, and we heard Calvin Hope criticizing Skerritt for calling them gangs, and you know they're all shareholders, and you know we know that Hope and his men don't have very much respect for Skerritt's leadership either, and this isn't benefiting West Indies cricket.
Definitely, Lance, and I have no problem with the leaders and those contesting having passion and of course speaking out about what doesn't sit well with them, you know, opposing and all these different things. But my thing is, you know, not showing up for any elections, you know, having this sort of disaccord when whether or not you all are directors and you have to sit on the same board and work towards these things. So it makes me wonder what really takes place behind the scenes when we can't see what's happening.
All right, so if you look from Barbados' perspective though, they say that the ground rules for voting were not communicated to them ahead of an election. That's major. That's not a small thing.
Right.
That is worthy of the strongest response. That's one. Put that on the table. Two, they say that the matter of the financial statements, the audited financial statements which have been approved and which you should circulate for review because the agenda requires review and examination of what has been audited. If you present those 24 hours before the AGM, you are not giving your members a chance, a fair chance, even an unfair chance. You're giving them no chance whatsoever to be able to go through the thing. So that's also requiring strong action. So in totality, if you are to just look through the lens that the Barbados representatives are peeking through, you will see that there is a lot that has aggrieved them. There is merit in them feeling aggrieved. And at the same time, I'd like to ask, all right, so the auditors wanted better particulars on March 11. They knew the timeline that the AGM was working by, March 28th. So they had 17 days to get information, to work that information into their thing and to send back the thing so it could be distributed in reasonable time. That did not happen. That's part of why we are here. So if you look through the Barbados lens, men of honor and men of substance, they are going to feel emasculated if they sit by and go along with a process that locks them out of the decision making.
Sure.
Because when you don't share financial statements, you're locking people out of decision making because they're not informed to make decisions. And then the important matter of an election, which we expect, we know how the result will go. But if it is that you're saying it's a transparent process, how is it that there are rules governing the voting and a procedure which Calvin Hope says he has never heard before until I presented them to him just now on this show? That's not cool, to put it lightly. Break time.